G'day punters, welcome to episode 12 of the Punters Academy. Welcome back John Walter.
G'day mate.
John, cracking weekends racing. We're going to cover some of those things in a minute. But really, the track on Saturday. I mean, a lot of people are talking about bias and talking about on pace and being the place to be. I mean, it was just tempo, wasn't it?
I think so. I think like after you're going back through it, it makes sense that if they're like slow speeds in basically every race, that it's going to be hard to come from back and wide. And sort of if you're going to make ground, you want to be making it efficiently, so sort of in behind and getting around. There was a little bit of wind around, so maybe that helped a little bit with cover. So if you're saving ground with cover, it makes sense. So you can treat it as it was difficult to come from back and wide, because it was, but I don't think it was the track. It's sort of more of the tempos as it played out. So it's basically the same thing, but it makes sense. It makes sense when you look at the results and the times they've run that it was always going to be difficult to come from back and wide, regardless of how the track was playing.
Yeah, and even on official times, I mean, during the course of the day, when I plugged that information into that Verify race day track condition, it was sort of suggesting tempo.
Yeah, and it's amazing really, because normally, whether it be a lead offence bias or tempo, normally by the end of the day they start ramping it up naturally and overcorrect, and they really didn't. So I'm not sure whether it was a bit of wind around or what that stopped the pressure going into the races, but they still ran time. Like a lot of the races still ran fast time, so it's not as if they were loafing up front. They've just sort of quickened off it. So maybe there is a little bit in that the track was playing fast and hard to run on. But again, it was, it still looks like most of the merit was in the horses up front, quickening off solid tempos and running time most of the time.
Yeah, maybe just better horses too, for the most part.
Yep.
Okay, so let's start with the highway. John, I got this one wrong. I couldn't find Charles Hart.
Yeah, it was a funny one for me. I didn't spend too much time in the race. I didn't really like it. Like the horses I sort of looking in for in the race was Gem Dealer. I thought was the best horse in the race, and it was not really suited by 1100. If it was sort of railed through and it looked like there was going to be a quick tempo or something, I probably would have been more interested in looking at the race. But he was always going to sort of get back and be in trouble, which made it ugly. And yeah, the winner sort of, I didn't think its form was super strong. Looking at it, and I was surprised how easily it won. And there was no real fluke about it. Got the right run, picked cover, got the split, and did it well. There was a couple of them, like Gem Dealer sort of ran up a few backsides, and so did Lady Demi. But all in all, it was a pretty nothing race.
Nothing race. I mean, the overall time about 2 lengths below standard for the 1100 there at Randwick, and given it was race 1, 2 first use of the track, it was probably worse than that. Really.
Yeah, and like a soft to even temper. So there wasn't. Yeah, there's no super merit in those horses that were unlucky behind. I think they'll want to find a similar to easier race to want to be worth following going forward.
So the Seoul 1600 metre event, the benchmark 78 was the next race, won by Valentino Rossi. Look, they've gone slow here, 7.8 lengths below, and come home, obviously sprinted there, 5.5 above. So we probably just saw horses with the turn of foot, Valentino Rossi and Travancore, going to the line.
It all made sense after the race, didn't it? Like it was a pretty easy fight. I know you found both of them, and it was weird considering like a lot of horses back in distance that no one wanted to lead, and the ones up front were those horses back in trip, and they kind of sort of took off early, but they couldn't take off early enough to suit them. It was they sort of signed their own death warrant pretty early in the race, and then it was left to the two sort of real sharp horses to come. It didn't matter how far back they were always going to out-sprint those plugging types, and they really did. It made a lot of sense after the race to me, so you've done well to find it before the race, but it made a lot of sense, especially considering that they weren't short. They were $10 and $7, something like that. They were both solid prices, so it all made sense after the race for me, but again, a complete trash race from going forward. You'd be struggling to find another race with that setup, so the sort of 2,000 metre horse coming back in distance, no leader. They'll be hard to find. I'd be forgiving actually to the ones up front, probably Missy Beale more than any, that sort of sat outside a slow tempo and was back in trips. If she went back to 2,000 with maybe blinkers back on, she could improve. She could definitely improve straight away. So she's probably the forgive horse, even though she might have looked a bit weak. I think she was just out sprinted.
Okay, so race 3, we'll talk about the protests and the questions. got a couple of things to cover there, but
I won't. Yeah, you can talk about that.
I'll
I'll hide
talk
under the
about
desk.
it.
I'll hide under the desk.
You don't want to sort of
I don't want to be
get called in, do you?
No, not again. No.
Okay, so True Detective obviously got the race on a protest. We'll talk about the merits of that in question time. But look, in terms of sectionals, I mean, they went out once again pretty slow and sort of sprinted, and overall was sort of just above average time. But what did you think, John? Did you think True Detective going into the race was a bit short?
Well, it was weird that the tip around for it, the confidence from the stable that was sort of in the media and everywhere was really strong, and I couldn't really back up justifying as shorter odds as it certainly came up. In review, it was lucky to win the race. I thought the ride was really weird. He's obviously been legged up and told this is nearly a steer job by the way he rode it, to my eye, where he could have sort of been third the fence and a little bit like he was there to be third the fence inside Superium, and he dragged back and ended up sort of 2 pairs further back to make sure he didn't get bottled up, whether he was told just to make sure he didn't go near that rail or that was his tactic. He was scared of being boxed in. He probably cost the horse a bit by riding it that confidently.
Very quiet.
And like he probably should have won the race because of that. As we said, we'll talk about it later, whether he should have won the race as it all panned out. Maybe not, but he did a good job. It was a fair enough job. Would I reprice him that short? Definitely not.
Probably coming to the end of its run, though, too.
Oh, absolutely, and that was probably more due to how he rode it early in the race and the task he set it, as opposed to if it had sat inside Superium and they come together, he probably beats him more.
Well, his last 600 was 7.4 lengths above. We're talking about a horse now.
Yep.
And the last 400, 6.4 above, and the last 200, 3.4. So
they've done something.
It's basically spent its powers by that stage, hasn't it?
Correct. And then what scares me, like you watch Edison, who's a maiden. He's obviously a pretty good maiden, but and he ran well first up in an unsuitable race, like off one trial, I think in a 1200 heavy. So he's obviously got some ability, Edison, and he missed the kick out the back, up the fence, held up, very unlucky. Like whether that detracts from the first two or not, or Edison's just a good horse that was out of luck, time will tell. But obviously the race is a bit of a jury out on paper. But I do think they've got ability, 1, 2, and I'm not sure who ran third. Did Lucicello run third? I can't remember. But it sort of over-raced and sort of it looked like it's found its mark. Yeah. Whereas I think Edison has got upside, especially if it goes back to maiden, it'll probably just win. But if it goes to a similar race, it can win. And the first two are certainly on the up.
So the next race, we've got the mile and a half, the 2400, and our candidate sort of hugged the fence and saved ground, but also probably, if anything, may have been in not the best lane. But they've gone so slow. I mean, they're 20.3 lengths slow. It's hard to
imagine that a horse like this has been in 2 sort of 16 horse fields or something like that and hasn't gone around a horse yet. I think it came from first up, never went round one. Then the other day, it's sort of not as many, but I think it was 3 fence and ended up, old mate blew the whistle on the turn, and when Nash rolled off, up the fence he went, and he's never really even touched it in 2 wins. It's quite a weird horse. And
it was a 600 metre race.
Yeah, it was, and that was, I thought his stablemate was interesting in the race, and he's the one who didn't want it to be a sit sprint, and he ran third. I thought he was probably the only forgive runner. Like Gayatri beat the rest easy, but he was in the right spot. He ran second. Attention Run, I'm not sure if it ran third or there was in that clump behind.
He might have run third.
Yeah, it's probably the one that wants a truly run, similar race, but truly run. He can run well, and the winner's obviously airborne, but has a nice turn of foot. So
and slowest time of the day, 9.4 lengths slow overall. So
it's just so ugly how slow they went out, isn't it? But,
exactly. I mean, it was a joke. So
yeah, it's probably a good grounding run for another 2400 for sort of your Gayatri Attention Run, because they've not worked too hard. I'd be saying that they're probably ready to go next time, and the winner's obviously, I don't know where he ends up. They'll probably be talking about things like Metrops or something like him if he can get his rating up. Pardon me.
Okay, so we've got a very impressive horse, Libertini in the Silver Shadow. She did an amazing job. I mean, wow, the figures that she's produced, 6.9 lengths above overall time. 3-year-old filly, that's pretty special, John. Yeah,
and so that was the first 400 of the race kind of set it up for her when Tim looked like he was going to lead easy on Valami, and then the little Victorian Raider or Adelaide Raider or whatever, the Luke Curry kicked up with intent to lead and sort of got Timmy's horse fired up as well, and then you saw Libertini trucking in behind, and I couldn't for the life of me work out. Like I knew she was a nice horse. I'm one of her biggest fans, and watching her at the trial, she looked exceptional. But when they sort of piled in from 190 to 150 or whatever it was, I couldn't really explain it on paper because I thought horses like Valami and what was it called, Let It Pour. Flip probably not its race today, but a very talented horse.
It'll be better suited over 7 furlong, I think.
Yeah, no, like he was obviously dragged out of the race too, so it's not a horse that has to give away the start that it gave this time, and it's obviously rocketed home. But I thought they were more competitive than $1.50 for Libertini, but when she was just trucking behind him, you were like, oh gee, I'll take $1.10. Yeah, take $1.10. Yeah, it all worked out very well for her. There's no doubt about that, and I do think the first 4 across the line, like. Valami sort of first up 1200, sitting outside the Victorian horse who was race fit, put it away nicely, grabbed and sort of settled fourth. It's a rubber stamped SQ or whatever you want to call them from the old Jelko days of a horse to follow. Like it's done all the work in the run. The winner sat on its back. It's kicked away, and its merit's been hidden by 2 horses grabbing it on the line that had softer runs. So Valami's an interesting horse wherever it goes. Will it turn the table on a horse like Libertini? Possibly not. But if they don't go the same way, there's not many races I wouldn't want to back it in. And Let It Pause another. I think it's a maiden as well, similar to Bjorn's other horse Edison. They're both. Knocking on the door of the better maidens around. And who else was in this race? Flit was huge as well, ran well. Yeah. It wasn't its race, it was a barrier trial for Flit, the way the race turned out and where it ended up. But I agree with you. And it sort of profiled similar to its stablemate Tenley, and it was obviously far more impressive.
Disappointing, wasn't it, Tenley?
Well, you got to think maybe Tenley, there's always a plan from that stable. Coming off a few failures last prep, it's hard to line it up. But if you sort of go way back, this maybe they're just saying Oaks for her. I'm not sure. They're both at Medagliadora. They're both bred to get ground potentially. Flit and Tenley, and
I mean I overrated Tenley on Saturday in terms of what I thought she should be, but really she
easy to do considering. If you're forgiving, that's it. And all she is a get back run on horse, and maybe James has been kind to these two, Flit and Tenley, with bigger things in store, like they may have long preps in store, whereas Libertini looked like she was ready to rumble. I don't know where the hell she ends up. Whether they try to stretch her to the mile and try and win the Princess Series, which looks not at her mercy, you wouldn't say that, but it's pretty close. And or do they sort of go 12-14, freshener for an Everest if she gets a spot? She looks like a sprinting powerhouse. So if she runs a mile, good luck beating her. I don't really know which way they go with her, but she's going to be pretty scary and dangerous and short priced wherever she heads next.
Indeed. So Deprive and Trope fought out the next race, and they looked to be probably the 2 best horses on paper. Overall time was above average, and they've gone out slow once again, and so the sectionals are very good. Deprive, looked in a bit of trouble maybe at one stage, and then got the run, and as to whether or not it was going to get the run, that was the issue.
It was, and when it was settled as close as it did, but then considering they haven't gone out that quick, they've gone out pretty soft, so it looks like it was just Deprive's birthday, the way the races worked out, considering where it settled. Obviously didn't have to work hard to get there, even though it might have been a little bit closer than normal. It got split, never got held up for 1 yard for momentum.
Well supported.
Yeah, it was. And then when they came out 460, I thought, gee, that's looks a bit wrong. Especially when I really like the stablemate this horse Cascadian going forward, but it didn't look the right race for him, and it looked like Trope was going to be back with Cascadian. So as it turned out, I was probably wrong, because I don't think you could possibly run the race better for Deprive, and it's fallen in really. And then Trope's put up an enormous
great effort.
From where it was in the run, you'd say that Trope would beat Deprive home far more often. It has to be favourite over Deprive, regardless of where it settles in the run. When you reprice the race,
there's probably a black type race there for it.
There is for sure. There's a huge race in it. Whether it runs a mile and it can win an Epsom or something like that, or it could win a shorter course race. It's a good sign that 12 was it 1100 or 12 first up. Conti Patiro scares me a little bit because I'm not sure what level it is, but I know it's the blinkers were on for the first time the other day, and it was the one to me that was desperately unlucky and through the line, was sort of charging past the line. It's a bit of a funny horse. It's got a flat spot, and I can't imagine that a sit sprint's really its go either, but the blinkers certainly switched it on. And Cascadian was really nice down the outside, 1400 plus. Like you're watching its replays, I was really excited about it when it gets to a mile. The way it was chasing the line, and it's not a horse that I doubt that, like, it didn't look wound up to me. I'm not the biggest genius in the yard, but watching it on TV and listening, it didn't look like he had it ready to go. And once it gets 1400 plus, he's a nice horse. He's a line chaser. So I know the race. I was surprised that they've actually gone above average. I'm a huge Deprive fan. No knock on it in the world, but you know, Trope, Conte Butiro probably going to be a little bit harder to place, but Trope and Cascadian, I'll be very surprised if there's not a solid race in their future.
Okay, the next race, the Wing Stakes, or Warwick Stakes, I think it was once. Look,
Tim Clark Stakes.
Tim Clark Stakes, I mean, rolled along at 0.4 of a length below and sprinted 6 above the last section. Great ride. And
so what does this say to me? Like, this was, to me, I know, I talked to Bjorn a lot before the race, and we had about 36 phone calls, I think I counted, between Friday and Monday when acceptances went through, and the other option for him was the Show County. So this horse loves to get control of its race, and he gave it a nice sound out in its barrier trial, thinking that he wanted it to be ready for either race first up. And this was the race where he looked more certain to get control, and when Dreamforce went the other way, even though it didn't end up running, it became a bit of a no-brainer to have a shot at the title with this.
Especially
with this race.
All those other horses first up, and
they're
getting on. I mean,
absolutely, and I marked it. I was saying to you, it was a funny situation for me where it's the first time I was cheering for Tim, but wanting to put my head through the TV at the same time, because I'd marked it sort of $8 before. But the reason I got to that price was because I thought it could easily be a fluke winner. It could go out, like, it could absolutely control the race. Tim could sprint off, take off whenever he wanted to, put these stayers that may or may not be ready to go today under pressure, and fall in and run terrible time and be absolutely flattered. Time. Well, that's what confuses me. Like, he's obviously carried weight for age. He's a 97 raider before the other day. He should have been getting 15 kilos off some of these horses in this race, and he's put them to the sword and run time. So, like, it's, to me, going forward to he's going to the Chelmsford next start.
And look,
you can't pen him next time around. Like, he's not going to go around 50 to 1, but he could catch him napping again, hopefully. Hopefully no one listens to this and they leave him alone again, and everything's all right. But
I haven't rated the performance yet, but will no doubt be a career best.
And the most incredible thing to me, other than the price that he was and the suicidal frame of mind to put me in after the race, despite my jockey riding a Group 1, which is a very strange situation for me and a world first.
You might have made more on the punt there, John.
Well, I definitely would have. A 50 to 1 chance when I mark them $8 in a Group 1, which is a race where you can get on, usually is, that'd pay for my year. So
send them a bill.
Yeah, and it was interesting when Tim rang me later that night, and I was kind of like, didn't know whether to congratulate him, hope he crashed his car. It's a very strange situation for me, and it sort of raised a few question marks, but that's a very different story. But like the horses behind, they've all done pretty much what you expected them to do. Probably Happy Clapper was.
I thought it was a poor ride. I mean, I honestly thought it'd be closer than that. I mean, they've.
Yeah, one way. I guess I know it was blinkers on. I expected him to probably be the one that lobbed outside.
Yeah, and I think, how old is it now, John?
Well, I think they forgot about the leader. There was John spinning everywhere. I think they forgot about the leader. Do these people want this? This is interesting. I think they forgot about the leader, to be totally honest, and I think in the run they forgot about the leader, and then all of a sudden they've looked up and it was 6 in front. I know I was with someone who'd backed Happy Clapper, and they were basically, getting so excited in the run, thinking the race was over, and I'm like, well, are you watching the race? Because Tim's 6 in front and bolting, so
he's stolen this.
Yeah, and when you look back at it, possibly, I think they probably do ride it a little bit closer, and I wouldn't be surprised in the Chelmsford if they pay more attention to Sambadou next time around and tag it a bit more. But going back and reviewing what they've actually done, Happy Clapper's run well. Invincible Jam had the run.
I didn't like Avilius going into the race. I was worried.
No, and I thought it was probably the one that was a little bit more suited to the sit sprint, and it was a little bit one pace. But again, where's his goal at Cox Plate? He's not ready. Happy Clapper was the one that was going to be a little bit more tuned up. I think he's coming off a bleeding attack, and close to the end of his career, I know that he's thinking Sydney's his hope, not Melbourne, so he's going to be more tuned up. Invincible Gem had the run, ran really well, had the right run. Kingsville Dream whacked down the outside, as you'd expect, Unforgotten all the same. Best of Days was probably the one that was a little bit disappointing, but again, where's the target for it? Young Star was completely detached early. They've obviously sent her there for a complete barrier trial, and she was fine. The one that I thought was probably disappointing, if there was one, was Very Elegant.
Needs a wet track, I think.
Yeah, it's a horse that I've never found in my life, and always been surprised by when she's been. But she was dominant in the 3-year-old against the 3-year-old fillies.
The horse would need the run Saturday, so
yeah. Well, it was the one that the jury's out on whether it needs a wet track or maybe possibly hasn't. It can't, like, maybe wait for age, may test it. Going forward, may need handicaps, but
yes.
Early in their preps.
Well, all honours to T. Clark there. That was
and Bjorn for throwing it in the race because like everyone, he was
Great
super
move.
confident. Like I know I'd spoken to him a bunch of that, super confident the horse would run a race, that he had him ready. I'd only had one trial, even though it was a good testing trial, and then he'd given it a good gallop, which a lot of people would be scared to do first up, and he got it right. Like regardless of what the time it's run and everything it's done, he got it right, and not many big upsets are usually explained on paper following the race. This one really wasn't. It's just saying that the price was wrong.
Perfectly written.
Yeah, perfectly written.
Yeah.
Good on him.
Okay, so Mizzy won the next, and to my detriment, Soothing was a little bit stiff, perhaps.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. It was weird. She's such a weird horse, Mizzy. Like one of probably my favourite horse. I backed her to win a fortune in the Coolmore at last prep, and I always had a huge opinion of her. Even I think she was sort of 12 for 1 or something before Saturday, and then they put up 850, which hurt after coming off the race before it. So I got hurt 2 races in a row emotionally through not being able to bet. But great ride. I would have been cursing him in the run because he jumped cleanly and then gave up the position in the running line to go behind a leader who I thought may not take him where he wanted to go. But then the split came. And then you followed him through. Great ride from Kathy to get it on the back of Mizzy. And then obviously she may have taken a wrong option. And obviously Tommy's got time for knocking her down as well. So Soothing definitely the unlucky runner, but it was a great ride. And if she got home, it would have been due to the ride probably.
And time was good. Respectable. About a second faster than the highway.
Again, off a slow tempo.
8 races later.
Yeah. So Mizzy's a good horse, and so is Soothing. Who was behind them? My expression came from last, so even though it was a softish tempo, these horses, dyslexics, come from back and run really well. Probably just peaked on the run really late. And
it probably needs to be on pace somewhere in the big
and it's got that ability, so it's a horse that can be followed, there's no doubt, and that sort of run really should help it from a fitness perspective. And then Into the Abyss also.
Okay, we've just been given the rustle up by someone who needs the...
no one's been in this room since the history of time, but someone wants the room. That's okay.
That's okay. So into the last race, Sweet Deal. Look, my biggest bet of the day was Prime Candidate. I was considering falling into the place as well, but it would have been too big an exposure for me. So fortunately, I marked Sweet Deal 15-2, pretty much the only other hope. Mm-hmm. I had Row here in 12-1. I know that's the wrong price. But
yeah.
Really,
well, it wasn't the wrong price.
How did it start? Favourite.
Yeah, so I remember that the early prices came out and talking with Timmy early in the week or whatever, and said, "Oh, this is just insane." Like the race looked like it looked exactly as it sort of fell. The person you want outside you, if you're controlling a race, is Nash for mine, because he doesn't, unless he's good enough to pressure you if he knows. But
generally
he's the sort of horse, if you're going to control the race, you want him outside you because he's very good at it. He doesn't tend to go too fast or eyeball you. He'll drag a length off you if he thinks it's to his advantage. So Tim was always going to get the front. It looked like Sweet Deal the only one coming outside it, and regardless of where Rohiran lobbed in the race, he'd never seen 1400 metres in his life. He was coming off a pretty average race, first up over 12, and now had to jump to 14 against a couple of battle-hardened horses. And I was similar to you. I was thinking, I thought he'd start $5, $6, $7, and I was amazed at the early price. And then I didn't really look at the betting, too honest to be late, but I knew that Prime Candidate had been well backed. Yeah. And I was extremely surprised that Sweet Deal started double figures, because it's just the way that the map looked, and you know,
They looked
well, the
cheap,
syndicate
didn't they?
guys are so heavy on these maps and the way things start now. It looked like a natural 1-2 play, especially if you're on prime candidate at maybe early odds. It was the easy horse to find. Like, well, you found that 15-2. That was kind of how you'd expect a lot of people to rate the race. Where 1-2 going to run 1-2. The track was suiting him. There was plenty in its favour, plenty against Rohirrim. It sort of looked a natural race to bet in. So I'm not surprised by the result. I'm surprised that prime candidate. Whether it didn't really sit down, did it? Like they've ripped home. But I'm surprised that prime candidate that Sweet Deal ran past it, to be honest, especially the way I probably thought Sweet Deal might have him for acceleration, but I thought prime candidate might be tougher than him, so even though it was going up in trip. So Sweet Deal's obviously flying, great ride from Nash, great ride from Tim on prime candidate, just wasn't good enough on the day.
Rohirrim disappointing.
Rohirrim really didn't do a lot, didn't do any more than Cariff, and then you've got Dealmaker who was first up. That was a good run, and probably those two middle distance horses have done more than Rohirrim, who should have a superior turn of foot to those horses. So the jury's out for me on Rohirrim.
Yes, okay, so Moonee Valley, we probably won't get too much into that because we want to cover the questions before we get removed from the venue here.
15,
but look, there wasn't too much to talk about there. The fast races overall were basically set up by very fast paces, so nothing really surprising there. Plenty of leaders won, plenty of well-backed horses won. Sassy Saltage, coming off a synthetic, from memory, was well-backed. They unloaded on Tavasan.
It was basically 9-4, take your pick, 5 minutes out. I was watching the betting on that race, and then all of a sudden, Turbium was out to $5, and this thing was into 6-4, and as much as you want. It was.
And look, I mean, Usain Bolt beat it at home, but it was like very wide.
I know the map kind of said it was going to get on pace-ish, but it looked like they knew it was getting the front today. It looked like they knew and it controlled, and the race was over a long way out.
It was a confident move.
Yeah, it was.
So we won't talk about that any further.
No.
That's the end of part one. We'll get into question time in a sec.